let me shift here, and I just want to talk a little bit about silence. Silence, my sisters and brothers, has many dimensions. There is a sacred silence, which is that silence out of which creative contemplation grows. It's a meditation on the word and the will of God. It's the silence out of which we meditate and get closer to God. It's the silence in which fervent prayer is born. There is a sacred silence. But then there's a seething silence that comes when you are quiet externally, but you've got a storm going on the inside. The late Dr. Howard Thurman called that a noisy quietness. But then finally, and here's the silence I want to get to, there is a sinful silence. And Adam's silence falls into this category because a sinful silence is a silence that comes over you when you ought to say something, but you don't say nothing at all. It is that silence that creeps in when you ought to speak up for God, but you sit there acting like you don't know what God said. My sisters and brothers, I fear that Adam was not only silent on that fateful day in the garden when a serpent showed up, but Adam has remained silent through the centuries. When Africans were captured and taken from their homeland, packed in the hulls of ships, sold on auction blocks, beat and killed and misused and kept in chattel slavery, Adam was silent. When Jews were persecuted, deported, and murdered by Nazis, Adam was silent. When Native Americans were slaughtered in the acts of genocide so their land could be taken from them, Adam was silent. When our ancestors were lynched and called boy and girl, even though they were full grown, when they were denied employment and equal access to resources, Adam was silent. And today, far too often, when our boys are shooting and killing each other on the streets, and our girls suffer from low self-esteem and give birth to children whose daddies won't stay around to take care of them, Adam is still silent. Sisters and brothers, there is a sinful silence among us when injustice is raging and we remain quiet. When people are aching, when people are hurting, when babies are crying and dying of hunger and not having enough love from insufficient care, and we remain silent, that is a sinful silence. When the church looks and sees what's going on in its communities, and not just in its communities, but what's going on right there in the household of faith, and we sit there and act like we don't know what's going on, that is a sinful silence. And let me suggest that there's a time when silence is sinful. And here in the text, we see a snake talking to Adam's wife. Adam remains silent. Adam should have said something. My sisters and brothers, the nation is waiting for somebody to say something. Go on, touch your neighbor and tell him you ought to say something. You see them boys on the corner, you ought to say something. You see what's happening with those sisters. I'm not talking about Pookie and Ray Ray and them. I'm talking about the saints' children. Y'all ain't gonna help me in here today. You ought to say something. The classroom is waiting for somebody to say something. Youth violence is waiting for somebody to say something. Every community, every city, every town, every home, every boy, every girl, every family is waiting for the church to break the silence. And if we don't break the silence, let me tell you what's going to happen. If we don't break the silence, we end up embracing the appeals of the serpent. What are the appeals of the serpent? Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. To go back to Lodabar. Your work's not done just because you made it to the palace. Oh, bless the name of the Lord. But you've got a responsibility to help somebody else make it across. Thank you, Jesus. Don't pull up the ladder because you climbed to the top. Don't blow up the bridge because you made your way across. Thank you, Jesus. But reach your hand back down the ladder and pull somebody else up out of Lodabar. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Bless the name of the Lord. Somebody gotta tell themselves it's all right if you got it now. Just hold it for me. I'll be there to get it after a while. Oh, bless the name of the Lord. Thank you, Jesus. You got to make up in your mind that what God has for me, it is for me. I might not have it right now. I may not get it next week. You might try to stop me from getting it. But if God said it's mine, I want you to know after a while, I'm going to get what belongs to me. Sometimes God got to strip what you got so you don't depend on yourself. He got to pick away from you so you understand how to depend on El Shaddai. Come on in here. Thank you, Jesus. Our young people are dying. Cracked out. Suicide. Homicide. They kill you at the time. Our jails are full. Yet the crime still runs rampant. Jesus.
90.7 WTCC. Good morning. Welcome to the Spoken Word. I'm your host, Bishop Talbert Swan II. And as usual, we'll be telling it like it is through cultural idioms and nuances that shape the order ethos and chaos of the African American experience. Words have their own vitality. They shape their own consciousness and create their own context for interpreting social and spiritual reality. The spoken word contains the power to reshape the landscape of society. 5 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. I want to thank my friend, Mr. Kenneth Barnett, for bringing us up to the 9 o'clock hour. Listen, you can hear Kenneth every Monday morning from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., bringing you the best in gospel music. Good way to start out your Monday morning. Great way to start out your week. And it's been a good week. At least for me, it has. What about you? I mean, yeah, I had a good week. How was your week? Listen, tell a friend, tell somebody the bishop is on the air. Those of you in the Pioneer Valley, welcome, welcome, welcome. Western Massachusetts, welcome. Vermont, welcome. Connecticut, welcome. All points throughout the valley that are listening to us right now over our 4,000 watts streaming live, broadcasting live rather, right here from One Armory Square, WTCC studios, and also streaming to all points over the World Wide Web. Good to have each of you with me. Those of you who are in on social media, I need you all to tell somebody that we're on. Share it, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and then make sure that you tell those that are normally on Instagram to come on over to your social media site. Come on over to Facebook, come on over to Twitter, come on over, to those various spaces, because, as usual, they're doing what they do. Instagram won't let me go live. I put up a post condemning white supremacy, and they said my post was hate speech. It's absolutely amazing how that works. White supremacists come after you, and then they accuse you of hate speech. So anyway, all of my IG listeners, y'all have to get over here in the other spaces. So tell somebody. I'm going to post something, let them know we're on the air. Listen, today I'm talking about the anatomy of a black sellout. The anatomy of a black sellout. If I was in church right now, I would tell you to repeat it with me. I would tell you to look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, the anatomy of a black sellout. Yeah, that's what we're talking about today. So listen, tell somebody it's going to go deep. Put on some scuba gear right now, because Bishop about to get deep on it. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We got too many of them in our community, and they'll sell us out for any old thing. Anything. And we got to figure out what we're going to do with these sellouts in our community. How do we handle it? I mean, what can we do? Is there anything we can do? Or do we just have to let them damage us and continue, to do that? So anyway, that's what we're rapping about today. 413-337-1867. Those of you who are on social media, rep your city, rep your town. Let me know where you're chiming in from so we can shout you out, see where you are. We're going to come right back. Of course, I always got to play, my son T Swan, my favorite song by him. Anyway, right after this, we're coming right back and we're going to get into this. Coming up at the 10 o'clock hour is the Justice and Flow after show. So stay tuned. I'm here till 11. All right, don't y'all go nowhere. We'll be right back.
Yeah. This one is for all the brothers that passed, but more particularly one because it affected me drastically. I remember my sister gave me the call and I was in awe. Matter of fact, it felt the farthest from reality. She seen somebody post RIP with his name and I said I doubt it's the same friend I had since the 7th grade. She said I'ma call his sister and double check and call me back. Said he hanged himself in his room and had been there for days. Initially it didn't hit me, then it clicked and I remembered that I hadn't seen or heard from the homie all week. But she had told me what had him feeling lonely and weak. I guess everybody got demons we don't even speak of. Cause I was with him exactly a week before the call. Just under 20, he couldn't even purchase alcohol. My best friend for like 6 or 7 years. I'm not ashamed to say I shedded plenty tears, but it was hard. He was somebody I had plenty memories with. The first person I ever burned any trees with. The worst feeling is knowing that you would leave us in all this grievance without a reason. One of the first people to ever believe in me. When it came down to it, you knew you could call me if you needed me. Cause that information I wouldn't have ever imagined. It's sad thinking about it. I ain't happy that it happened, but it made me. There was plenty times when I thought that it would drive me crazy. But looking back on it now I see all the time that it gave me. I learned more about why I am who I am on the daily. I know it may sound crazy, but I'm glad that it made me. Yeah, was born the son of a pastor, he was who I was named after. Matter of fact, I even got some of his characteristics. Both of us got messages for the people. I just do mine with rhythm on beat, he do his on the pulpit with scriptures. Well connected, respected in the community. Ever since I was little, I felt like there was some pressure on me. It started off with little stuff like when my folk brought us to church and then they forced us to get up and say a testimony. Getting older, had to watch how I acted in public, cause people wouldn't hesitate to put that in discussion. Chatting like, is it that the pastor's kid? I'm like, yeah, that's me. But please don't expect me to be exactly like my daddy. Don't discredit my family for how I am. I'm not a little kid no more, I'm now a man. And I ain't pointing fingers, I'm not trying to do no blaming at all. When it comes to how I came up, I wouldn't change it at all, because it made me. There was plenty times when I thought that it would drive me crazy. But looking back on it now I see all the time that it gave me. I learned more about why I am who I am on the daily. I know it may sound crazy, but I'm glad that it made me. Yeah, glad that it made me. Yeah, glad that it made me. Looking back on it now I see all the time that it gave me. So glad that it made me. Yeah. Baby, yeah, me baby, you may sound crazy, baby.
I look in the mirror and I like what I see. A strong, beautiful black woman staring back at me. One who's seen a lot of pain and had her share of sorrow, but who never gave up hope for a brighter tomorrow. I've been lied to, cheated on, stolen from and hate, but it just made me stronger and I refuse to quit. That's right. And though I've been tempted, I refuse to stoop to their level. I rose above that nonsense and made a liar of the devil. All right, now. Who said I wasn't good enough, cute enough, or worthy of love? I kicked his divine love. Power in all things through Christ, which strengthens me and brought me out of darkness so that I could see that I'm smart, I'm beautiful, I'm a child of the King. Abundant love for me, He came to bring. Oh yes, when I look in the mirror, I love what I see. That strong, beautiful black woman, that woman is me.
90.7 WTCC. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Are you repping your city? Are you repping your town? Let me know where you're coming in from. on social media here. I need to know who watched the verses last night. You know, I know you super deep Christians. Y'all not gonna watch verses until it's like John P. Key versus Fred Hammond or something like that. I get it. I understand. But I grew up on hip hop, and the two guys they had last night were two of my favorites. They were around when I was in college. Big Daddy Kane and KRS-One. I'm a huge Kane fan, but you know it's hard to go against KRS. He got a lot of bangers. So it was a good time. Hip hop won last night. Black music won last night. And guess what else? Guess who else won last night? Are y'all guessing? The Steelers won. The Steelers won last night. Okay? And guess who lost? Guess who lost, y'all? Because I know y'all up in these comments and stuff. Y'all up in these comments. You Patriot fans, I know y'all up in these comments and stuff. I know it. You know, I mentioned that the Patriots were going to lose at church, and the whole audience was like, boo, boo. Brother Arnold, you out there, bro? Because you predicted at the end of service yesterday that the Steelers were going to lose and the Patriots were going to win. You're going to have to sharpen your prophecy skills, bro. Because just the opposite happened. The Patriots lost and the Steelers won. Go Steelers. It's your birthday. Go Steelers. Hip hop won and the Steelers won on last night. 413-337-1867 is the number here. Yeah, it got quiet in church just together. It got quiet when I said that the Patriots were gonna lose, and this is what made it. This is what made it bad, Marvin Anderson. This is what made it bad for y'all Patriots. They lost to the Cowgirls. It's bad enough to lose, but then you got to lose to the Cowgirls? Come on, man. Woo. And the Steelers beat the Cowboys in the preseason. Just to remind you. Just so y'all know what the deal is. Anyway, I figured I'd rub that in a little bit because you know how y'all Patriots fans be getting. Again, 413-337-1867. Let me see who's up in here. You know what? I'm not on my YouTube. So anyway, rep your city, rep your town. Let me know where you're chiming in from. Tell a friend, tell somebody. We're on the air coming up at 10 o'clock, Justice and Flow after show. But today I want to deal with the anatomy of a black sellout. The anatomy of a black sellout. Now let me make it clear. I in no way have an expectation that every black preacher, elected official, so-called leader in whatever capacity, whether you're in business, education, whatever field of endeavor, has to be an outspoken activist like I am. I understand fully that we need people in different spaces to effect change in different ways. So everybody is not going to be in the streets marching. Everybody's not going to be pulling the coattails and challenging the powers that be. Everybody's not going to be challenging the mayors, the governors, elected leaders, etc., etc. I fully understand that dynamic. At the same time, that you may not be on the spectrum. Good morning, Deacon Lovejoy. Angela Thorpe, third vice president of the NAACP. Good morning. Yes, Tony, Steeler Nation. But understand this. Even if you are not in the social advocacy space, you ought not be harming the black community. Good morning, caller.
Hey, how you doing, Brett?
I'm good. How you?
This is Mississippi.
Yes, sir. Mississippi in the house.
Yeah. When you get chance, I'm looking for you to give me a call.
All right, sir. Number. All right, sir.
But you know, I was listening. You hit on it a little bit. I think when it comes to, especially a minister, anybody that's a minister, you should have some activism off in you, because that's one of the things that comes with the calling. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that if you ain't got no activism off in you, I really don't believe God called you. You may call yourself. If you ain't trying to set the captives free, if you I don't understand why how the preacher just want to get people to heaven, but don't want to get the people out to hell that they facing here on earth. Mm. You see what I'm saying?
I understand.
I got a problem. I got a major problem with that. You can go in an asthmatic mode to get me in the heaven, but you're saying silent night. What the hell is going on down here?
Silent night. Wow. I'm feeling you, brother.
Instead to deal with these white supremacist demons and these house Negro demons. So I got a problem with it, but yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna hang up and I'm gonna listen to what other folks gonna say.
All right. Thank you for your call. Woo! I'm gonna leave that alone. That fire's burning all by itself. That's burning all by itself. You should not be doing things that harm our community. You should not be strengthening the hands of our open enemy. Okay? You should not be undermining black people who are standing up for us. And listen, that is a serious issue, because it's not just that sellouts are sycophants to the white supremacist power structure, but they are actively trying to undermine black people who are speaking in doing things in the best interest of the black community. Now, you remember some of Dr. King's speeches. He often referenced, he said in one speech, that's one of my favorite speeches, he said, living every day under the threat of death, living every day under extensive criticism, even from Negroes. So Dr. King was not just concerned about his enemies that were criticizing him. He was also concerned about the fact that the black people that he was standing up for were some of his major critics. At the time of his death, he had a low approval rating, not just among white folks, but among black folk. Good morning, Lisa Jones, Grady Ponder. Good morning, Michelle Server. So some of our worst enemies are our own people. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bishop. God bless you, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is a very touchy subject, but I just wanted to say I thank you for talking about this. One of the things that is so frustrating about sellouts these days is they clothe themselves in political activism. They clothe themselves in speaking out for the people, so sometimes it's hard. And so I will just say, talk about me, for instance, here in the city of Springfield. I sat in a room with 6 men. I invited you, but you didn't have you were busy. And we talked about blacking out the mayor, not allowing the mayor to come into our community because of how he was treating us with the commissioner, Cheryl Clapton. And when I moved the mayor, there are black people in this community who are in leadership positions, who are in office, who are running for office, telling me that it wasn't the right time to do that. I have been ostracized in this community. People in leadership positions, they will associate with the mayor, but when they see me, they act like I got a plague or something. And so, and they stand up before the community and they articulate what they want for the community, but when you call out the mayor or anybody else, I have become the bad guy. In certain instances, you have become the bad guy. And it's so difficult, particularly in Springfield, because what happens is there are black organizations like, I'm going to say it, like the Harambe and others, so where they invite the mayor into the community and they give him the platform to do what he do, because, and this is what I've been told, sir, by one of the directors, well, he gave us all the money for this event. He supported us with the police, and so we can't allow you to talk bad about the mayor because of what he's doing to me. I've had state representatives, I've had city council members, I've had people who are running for office to treat me like I have a virus or something, and they won't come around me. The people in this community who are in leadership positions, Bishop, they don't want nothing to do with it. And then those are the same people, Bishop, who you, myself, First Lady Swan, and others are supporting right now, Bishop, who, when I come around, they move away from me. I've never attacked those in the black community. I'm attacking the mayor and the police commissioner. But there are people in this community, this very community, sir, who are putting up the black power signs. They're putting up black fist signs. They're talking about all the stuff they want to do for the black community. But when Charles Stokes comes around to start talking about it, about the people who are impacting us, then I become the problem. And so, and because we have relationships with a lot of these people, we grew up with them, they go to our churches and the mosque and all of that, it's hard, especially, and this is what I've been hearing, Bishop. I testified in a murder trial against Vicky Seymour. I had a city council person come into the barber shop and talk about the $27 million that was awarded to Mark Shand and the part that me and others played in that murder trial under Francis Boone. He articulated that out to the atmosphere, and I'm not worried about it, nobody did it. But there are black people, city council members in Springfield, Massachusetts, who despise us because of what they do now. They shake your hand, Bishop, and they deal with you because of, I'm gonna be honest, you have a strong family, you have a strong support system, you have a nucleus around you that supports you. But when others of us who are ex-crackheads, ex-heroin addicts, ex-whatever, in our past, they put our past up there, and so the sellouts continue to do what they do. So
here's the deal. So, and I feel your passion, brother, definitely. And for 30 years, I've experienced everything that you're talking about. I've experienced, from elected officials to other community leaders, business owners, etc., who always smile in my face, are cordial to me, who talk a good game when it comes to the issues that concern our people, and pretend that they're in my corner and supportive, etc. And then behind my back, that Talbert, he's out of control. Yep. He's a bomb thrower. He's a lone wolf. He's not a team player. Yada 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 yada. I dealt with that, and I currently deal with that. I completely understand what you're talking about. And see, here's the broader issue is this. The broader issue is this. Until we are able to provide for ourselves, until we are no longer dependent on white elected leaders and business leaders to feed us, to write our checks, to finance our political campaigns, to give our organizations grants and CDBG funds and other funds, then basically we are going to be controlled by the very community that we are trying to get free from. I've dealt with it so many times where I couldn't get black leaders of public service organizations to rally to protest the disparate treatment with which certain federal funds were being distributed. How one year I did an audit and found out that the entire black community, every agency in the black community, MLK, the Urban League, the Children's Study Home at the time, MCDI, you name it, everyone who was servicing the Mason Square area and the broader black community had gotten a combined amount of a little less than $50,000 in public service dollars. One organization in the Latino community got 5 times that. One organization in the white community got 5 times that. And I said, how is it that the negative status indicators in our community drive the numbers and that create the formula for what Springfield is allocated? And then when the money gets here, it doesn't hit the community that is most in need. And these leaders of these agencies would not commit to come to a meeting with me, with the mayor, to address the issue because they were afraid that if I was seen with Bishop Swan or seen to be complaining about this allocation, then the little $5,000 or $10,000 grant that I do get will be stripped away from me. And the problem is, when they can control you with $5,000 and $10,000 grants, that speaks to a greater issue in our community as to why we remain so dependent on the crumbs that fall from the table, while they're giving others 10, 15, 20 times that. They can silence us with a $10,000 grant or with a $5,000 grant.
I've heard you speak on this before, and as I've been watching from the background over the last 2 months, because I really fell back, because my mother, who is 85 years old, she said, son, it don't seem like the Negroes here, but she used a different term, want better. And I was really like stressing myself out. But I want to ask you this. With all of the information that you put out, and for everything that you say, why isn't there a more collective effort for the people to come in? Even after hearing everything you just now said, you won't have any elected black official that I've heard of so far stand out with you in the community to talk about this. This is what I hear. Well, we're not going to talk about this right now, but after the election is over, then we're going to get on to this. They won't, at this point right now, Bishop, after hearing everything you said, we've been talking about the Shannon Grant money and how it's been disproportionately allocated. The Salvation Army on Pearl Street received $85,000 grant, and they do nothing in the black community at all. But the disparities keep going on because
what's worse than that is the Shannon Grant, and it's been around for a long time. I was working as the assistant executive director of yes when the Shannon Grant came to the Commonwealth under at the time he was over the Executive Office of Public Safety, Ed Flynn, who eventually became the Commissioner of Police in Springfield. And I secured a Shannon Grant for our organization for the Reverend Theodore Brown anti-gang initiative. And that money is supposed to be to effectuate change in youth that are either gang involved or at risk of becoming gang involved. We know good and well the Salvation Army does not work with black youth that are at risk of being gang involved. We know it. We know it. But as long as the community is silent, when the administration allocates its money, then they're going to keep on doing it. They will do what you allow them to do. It's like Eddie Murphy said, if you give a Negro a rope, he'll want to be a cowboy. If you allow them to do this over and over again, and there's only one voice speaking out. I spoke out against the Shannon Grant allocation, and actually at that time, with the help of Bud Williams and some others who were on the city council, I got the city council to hold up accepting $800,000 from Shannon Grant to force the issue, to talk about how these monies were being allocated and why they were being distributed from the police department and all of that. But yet and still, we see the same thing. We see a few black organizations, and even some of the black organizations that get money through that grant don't do work with gang-involved youth. So oftentimes, monies come for a specific purpose, and the city does with the monies whatever they want to do. And as long as we're silent, they'll continue to do. I got to get off. I got to make room for some other callers.
Thank you, sir.
Your call. 413-337-1867. Let me let Blackheart in the Twitter space. If you're in the Twitter space and you want to chime in, hit that request, and we'll get you in. Blackheart, you should be able to chime in.
Hey, what's up, my brother?
How you feel?
I'm great. I want to tell you something that we as black people, or I say Terrence, that's my name on that Terrence.
Yes, sir.
It's a problem that we have as Terrence, because I don't use black and I don't use Negro, because there's more than us than just being dark-skinned people. But here's the issue when it comes to our kind. Our kind gets a little bit of status, and they cannot hold on to more than just that status. They're like, we can't talk about this. We can't do this. We can't anger these people. They're the ones that got the money. But you're supposed to be the ones to be our advocates. They're advocates for themselves, not for us. Number two, the bigger thing is, and it's in the Bible, and it's the truthful thing that is for all people, the enemy on the outside is not as worse as the enemy on the inside. There are people that are perceived to be your allies, your friends, your family, or whatever. But when it comes to them getting ahead just a little bit, they will take that over the advancement of the rest of us every single time. And that's the history of us as black people in this country. And they know that about us. Now, see,
and they know how to play it. They know how to play us against each other with it. How to pit one of us against the other. And one of the things that they have always done and continue to do, I remember back in the 90s, myself and a couple of other black preachers, the minister from the mosque and a couple other conscious black preachers would challenge the system. And then what they would do, it was ingenious. I got to give them credit for it. Is they would then trot out other black preachers to refute whatever we said, as a signal to the community. Don't listen to those preachers. Listen to our favorite sycophantic preachers who are going to apologize, for what we're doing. And so they do that all the time.
I'll give you another one, brother. They do this on the political level also. They will trot out these so-called black conservatives to mention everything that is awful in the black community. And there's a lot of awful things that go in our community. There's a lot of awful things that go in every community. But we are the only group of people that when something happens, let me say this, like we do with police brutality. A cop shoots a young kid. Well, what about the young kid shooting a young kid in the gang? And say, well, look, I live in Chicago. That's where I'm from. Everybody in the city gang bangs. Everybody. So, do you say that when a white kid gets shot by a cop, or a Hispanic kid did get shot by a cop lately, and they say the same thing? What about the other kid getting shot by another Hispanic kid, or another black kid shooting a Hispanic kid? The issue is simple. The enemy on the inside are these politicians. And I will say, listen, brother, I hear where you're coming from, because you seem to be a good religious man. A lot of these churches, that are in the black community, it's like I always say about us terrorists as people. What does not work for us, we need to get rid of. And we have to remove certain people from the bloodline. And you said it yourself. Just because you have the same skin color don't make you my people.
That's it. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. No, I was just agreeing. All skin folk ain't kinfolk.
And we have to move to the point as a community, that we have to listen. I always say you have to internally build, right? That's the issue. We have not taught our children. We let them teach our children. They know what they did with these schools and stuff. They're not teaching these black kids how to survive. They teach them from the prison to the school pipeline. That is exactly what. When I was a kid growing up in the city, listen, I'm going to tell you something. I heard about Martin Luther King, right? Growing up. I never heard about the Black Panthers until I got older. I never heard about Malcolm X until I got older. I never heard about a lot of leaders who had different ways of doing things within our community, talking about group economics, except a few people. And listen, I live in Chicago. Lori Lightfoot, recently, there was a crime committed by a young black person, right? Like I said once again, there's crime committed every day about every group in this city. But every time somebody black commit a crime, their face is plastered all over the television screen. 100%. The issue is that we have to find like you here. You need to have your own station to build your own management so you can build our own media. Because the media is another big thing that we don't talk about. The media is the biggest thing that they control.
You know, the other day, and I'm gonna let you go after this. The other day, because you make a good point when you talk about the media. When they were covering the young white lady who was kidnapped and killed, and all of this conversation began about how black women and black girls go missing every day, and nothing is ever said about them. And you had people like Joanne Reed and others who were parroting this disparity. And while I agreed with the disparity, because 75,000 black women and girls are missing right now, and no one is talking about. But my problem was, I said, wait a minute. But here you are on a major network with a major platform, and you've never said anything about it. So how are you all on MSNBC and other places complaining about the fact that the media hasn't paid any attention to these missing black women and black girls, and you're part of the problem? There's always this level of hypocrisy and cognitive dissonance that occurs all of the time. And you're right. We need to get our own. You know, I can't stream on Instagram right now because I posted something against white supremacy. So they said I was engaging in hate speech. So that whole audience is cut off. We need our own. I encourage people to support Isaac Hayes III, who started Fanbase. I encourage people to support a Triller, which is now owned by Timberland and Swiss Beats. Black media, a way to get our own message out without it being sanctioned by or censored by our open enemy. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
413-337-1867. If you're in the Twitter space, put in that request and we'll get you in. I see English. Let me see who. English Spaniel. The thing about Twitter is you don't know the real names because there's so many pseudonyms. All right, English, you're on. You're live in the Twitter space. Going once. Going twice.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Eating breakfast. Thanks for the heads up.
All right. What's happening?
Hi, I just wanted to give praises and thanks to the Almighty, and also give praises and thanks to you and all of the leaders who are forthrightly addressing what has befallen our community as well as our nation, where we have forgotten who we are, where we are. We have fallen prey to rampant materialism, which has become our undoing. And I thank you very much for allowing me to have this space.
All right. Thank you so much for chiming in. 413-337-1867. I'm talking about the anatomy of a black sellout. You know, it was during a House Oversight Joint Subcommittee hearing that conservatives invited Candace Owens to testify that white supremacy didn't exist, that it wasn't even among the top 100 issues facing black America. Now, here's the thing. At any given point in time, those of us that have a platform that are speaking against white supremacy, racism, anti-black bigotry, and for the empowerment of black people, if we decided we wanted to switch sides and cater to white supremacists, apologize for white supremacy, and talk down to black people, we could blow up overnight. We could blow up overnight. Candace Owens is a college dropout who never voted before 2020, never voted a day in her life. She's a sycophantic puppet, white supremacy apologist for racist conservatives, pushing this narrative that racism in America is dead and gone. She's an expert on nothing other than foot shuffling and buck dancing and providing cover for white supremacy. So why the hamburger was she testifying before Congress? You know, where was she educated? What did she have a degree in? Nothing. What in her little over 30 years has she mastered, researched, become proficient at, or pioneered? Nothing. But she's testifying before Congress because she can parrot a white supremacist agenda. And let's be clear, our open enemies have become masters at developing black bootlickers to do their bidding. That's why they can always point to a black person and say, see, look at him. See, look at her. This is who you ought to listen to. Not that Bishop Swan guy. They have become masters at developing, nurturing, financing, and propping up black bootlickers. People who parrot their racist narrative, ostensibly to give credibility to their fictive reality of an America where black people should no longer have a grievance. Because, you know, racism is a thing of the past. You know, they want you to believe that black people have received their due recompense, that there is nothing else that is owed to them for 400 years of slavery, oppression, degradation, murder, lynching, segregation, brutalization, and dehumanization. And I mentioned Candace because she just happens to be one at the top of the list of well-compensated, go-to, backslapping adulators that are called upon to do masses bidding by trying to erase the history of anti-black bigotry and oppression and placing the plight of the black community squarely on the shoulders of black people themselves because they haven't pulled themselves up by their bootstraps yet. And so they tried to change the conversation from the degradation and dehumanization of our people, and they say, well, what about black on black crime? What about black women getting abortions? You know, according to the white supremacist narrative, this explains the extrajudicial murder of black people by police. It explains racial profiling, the disparate treatment of black people in the criminal justice system, the wage and education gaps, the health disparities, so many other factors that affirm racism's existence and pervasiveness in America. It ain't because of us, it's because y'all are lazy. You know, you ain't doing what you should do. And so they sing the praises of black sellouts, Thomas Sowell. Y'all don't listen to Thomas Sowell, Bishop. Y'all don't listen to Larry Elder. Y'all ought to be more like the Hodge twins. You know, they sing the praises of black sellouts and bootlickers because they entertain them by being a black face that castigates black people, utilizing the language of white supremacy. And I mean, so many people have tweeted at me, inboxed me, DM'd me about how I should follow or listen to these bootlicking sellouts just because they're black. And they do that because they say, well, you can't call them racist because they're black. Basically, what black sellouts do, sisters and brothers, they provide race insurance to white supremacists who call on them to speak at their conferences and events, and who invite them to appear on their television and radio programs. The thing is, the people that they call on, most of the time, your Herschel Walkers, your Candace Owenses, your Daryl Scotts, they have no real connection to the black community. Your Van Joneses. You know, that's why Jeff Bezos can give him $100 million, because he makes him feel comfortable. They have no real connection to the black community. In actuality, they are not connected to true black conservatives, because there's a difference between true black conservatives and these black sycophantic sellouts. And so white bigots are comfortable with them because they pose no threat to their views, to their actions, to their commentary about our people. They will never challenge their racist and distorted view because they are their benefactors. We got them everywhere. We got them here in our city. Those that are around those in power. And understand, black faces in white spaces doesn't mean true diversity, at least not true diversity of thoughts and ideas as it pertains to the betterment of our community. They pay their bills. They love to see them perform and stick it to black people on social media. They love for them to challenge social justice warriors who are always complaining about white supremacy. And what they seem to forget is the fact that we've been here before. Today is Candace Owens, it's Larry Elder, it's Herschel Walker, and you name the people in your city, in your town, because there are the equivalents wherever we are. Today, they're the flavor of the month. You know, the go-to black sycophant that gives goosebumps to the racism deniers, to the birthers, to the bigots, to the white supremacists. But they're not the first to play this role. Others have come and faded away into the sunset, only to be reincarnated when massa needed them again. You know, she's today Stacey Dash, Herman Cain, Alan Keyes, Sheriff Clark, Alan West, Jesse Lee Peterson. We've always had the black sycophant with us, and we always will. The one thing history has taught, based on the shelf life of these folks, is that their 15 minutes of fame will be over before you know it. And when they get done with them, they'll throw them away. Just like they threw away Alan Keyes. Y'all ain't heard nothing from him, have you? Once upon a time, he was the darling of the white community. Sheriff Clark, Herman Cain, they killed him going to a Trump rally and catching COVID. Stacey Dash, they threw her away like used toilet paper. When they get done with you, they're done with you. There's a graveyard of black puppets that's filled with people like Candace who are willing to be used like a condom, filled with the semen of white supremacy, and then discarded after conservative racists reach their ultimate climax. Go on and preach, Bishop. Good God, that was good. I'm serious that just like the puppets before them, the ones who sold out Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey, they'll soon be flushed in the toilet of forgetfulness and join that infamous cadre of black sellouts who sold their souls, who discarded their integrity, who lost their credibility, pandering to a sponsor whose only use for them was to oppress their own people. Whew! 5 minutes left in the spoken word before we transition to justice and flow. Let me get some of you all here. Alexander Tyler, let me bring you into the Twitter space. Let me bring you in. You're on.
Hey, Bishop Swan, thank you so much for hosting the space. I'm going to ask you permission to kind of go on a slight segue here. I'm an emergency room physician, and my practice setting is between a rural kind of critical access setting all the way to an inner city setting, because I go and work between multiple hospitals. And one of the things that gets kind of overlooked, and I guess it's something that's mentioned by some folks, is just the racism in medicine, right? And for me personally, the patient interactions that I have and everything else, I mean, it's just a completely different situation than what people portray in the media. And I think that racism ultimately is a multi-tentacled beast that is very, very difficult to defeat, because it wants to rear its tentacles and eyes and heads everywhere that it possibly can. And one of the things that I'm seeing a lot, for example, is kind of the healthcare disparity that's available for patients. And when I'm in my inner city setting, it's a completely different experience than when I'm in my in a more affluent area or something like that. And the majority of my patients are people of color in the inner city setting. And one of the things right now, obviously, with the COVID vaccine and everything else, is there's a lot of hesitancy. I've had multiple patients bring up to me kind of the Tuskegee experiment, where they, brutalized a lot of African Americans, with syphilis and things like that. And I try my best on the daily to kind of explain, go through, all the steps of what happened, how this vaccine came about, and things like that. And I try to reassure, because myself, I'm triple vaccinated, but that's because I'm in a high risk work environment and I need to be. And I use myself as an example and say, look, I've gotten my shots, and it's like I haven't had any ill effects. And it's like, it seems to me like there is this campaign to prevent people of color to get the vaccine. And I find it heartbreaking, because a lot of people that would benefit from this, because of the lack of trust in the science, or the lack of trust in, just the system, are reluctant to get the vaccine. And I try my best to explain it, but it's very hard to. I mean, I'm doing it on a one-on-one, right? I don't have some huge platform where I can come and speak and say, look, these are the truths about what is going on. This is why it's safe. This is why I recommend getting it. And this is why I've personally gotten the vaccine. So let me because I gotta wind down and close out the first hour. Yes, in 2 minutes. But let me offer you this. I hear everything that you're saying, and we've been working in our community since last October for about a year, in addressing vaccine hesitancy and all of that. The bigger issue for a lot of people in the Black community, and these are the questions that they're unable to answer. They will say that Black people died at a disparate clip from cancer, from hypertension, from diabetes, from various other diseases. How come there was no big concerted effort to push Black people to get tested or get care or figure out a way to prevent these other morbidities? And then given the history, like you mentioned, Tuskegee and other, given the history of distrust with the medical community, to a lot of people,
they're very suspect. Why are they pushing this so hard when they've never pushed anything else as hard as they're pushing this? And so, it's a catch 22. We just don't have time. We just don't have time because I gotta transition out. But if you hold on, maybe we can come back to you. I wish I had time to continue on with the doctor, but it's 10 o'clock. I got to get out your way for those who are listening to the spoken word. Until the next time I talk to you and you talk to me, always remember God loves you and so do I. Stay right where you are because we're coming right back with the second hour, transitioning to the after show of Justice and Flow. Doctor, stay with us. Stay with us. I want to try to get you back on. Those of you who are streaming, don't go nowhere. Those of you who are listening over WTCC, get on your device and come on over. We'll see you in a minute. First lady's in the back room. I hope she got my breakfast. All right, we're coming back. Good morning. Welcomes. The after show. We in here. Up in here. Justice is flowing. This justice is flowing. All that stuff.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Hey.
What was that now?
That sleep was good this morning.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to talk to you about that because I was trying to get something popping, and then you flipped to the other side, and then you flipped to the, and then you went over to the other side, and anyway,
That is inappropriate on this show. Good morning, everybody. It's Justice and Flo.
It is what it is. I'm just saying. You know what Mother June said.
Good morning, baby. Good morning, Whit. Good morning, all my friends. I see everybody telling me hello. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. Hey,
All
the
right.
conversation was popping this morning on the spoken word.
What's that now?
Your conversation this morning, your show this morning. Popping.
Well, I was really wanting to keep the last caller on.
Well, please do. Where is he?
Yeah, I just invited him to come back up. To my doctor friend who I was talking to, I just sent you an invite.
I got it.
You're here. All right. Hold on. Let me adjust the music back down. So this is the second hour. This is our Justice and Flow hour, and my co-host is my wife, Cynthia Swan. So she's on the air with us. But you were talking about the vaccine hesitancy, and you were going to address what I said about that dichotomous history of this heavy push for vaccinations when it seems like to many in the Black community they have never pushed this hard to mitigate any other disease or malady that has been affecting our community. And you were gonna tell me your opinion of why.
Right. So there's a couple of reasons, and I'm going to kind of break this up a little bit. The first part is that obviously COVID acts much more quickly than, say, heart disease and high blood pressure and things like that, right? Diabetes, etc. And so, and this is something that affects all people equally, regardless of gender, ethnicity, in terms of the ability to contract the virus, right? Not in terms of what happens once you get into the healthcare system.
But you have to understand. You have to understand that that's part of what pushes the hesitancy, because Black people perceive this as, oh well, now that this disease can affect white folks too, they want to push us to get vaccinated. But as long as we're the ones who are dying, they're not concerned with it.
That's 100% accurate. And the bottom line, this whole entire thing, everything comes down to one thing, and that's money. Okay? And let me explain exactly how the healthcare system in this country works and what's happening. Right now, you have basically the corporatization of medicine in this country. And so they see each one of us as an expense, and they see the people like myself that are working it as an expense. They want to go for the lowest possible cost on every single line item regarding healthcare that they possibly can, right? So one of the reasons why traditionally African Americans and other people of color have been kind of, pushed off to the side is because of the financial cost. Because if you don't have good insurance, which is a scam, if you don't have good, just financial, capabilities, you can't afford to pay for your treatment. So why should I even, not me personally, but why should the healthcare system at that point do anything? And that's the racist mentality they have built into the system, right? Because they only care about people who have money. And if you notice, anybody who has money, regardless of ethnicity, they get treated a totally different way than the average person coming into the emergency room. And I know because I see it with my own eyes, because that's what I do on the daily, right? So ultimately, the one thing about the vaccine is that, and the reason why I'm so strong on getting everybody to get it, is because it keeps you out of the healthcare system altogether. It's a free shot. You get it. Hopefully you never contract COVID. Therefore, you never have to experience all of that racial disparity and all the other issues that are associated with being put into the hospital. It's different than, and don't get me wrong, I will be available to you if you ever want to do any kind of health campaign, push, anything like that. I'm totally cool with working with you on that. When it comes to all the other healthcare issues that are there, in terms of heart disease, prostate cancer, breast cancer, diabetes, et cetera, et cetera. All those things are huge, issues within the African American community, especially. And so, this is like one of those deals where I just try to implore everybody to get the vaccine because it does help keep you out of the healthcare system altogether, right? Like if you get your shot, you go home, and people are like, well, they have a lot of questions about how the vaccine was made, like was it rushed, and this, that, and the other. And some of the things they did with this, and it's interesting because all of a sudden, when all the countries in the world decide to get together and fix the problem, and all of a sudden all these countries decide to basically create an infinite cash supply to make this problem go away, and then all of a sudden get all the scientists in the world to work in this field, to work together and trade and exchange notes and ideas, suddenly they can solve problems very quickly, right? And why is that not being applied to other issues and other disparities throughout the world? Why is that same concept not being applied everywhere? Because obviously we have proof of concept now that you can do this. This is something that can be done and can genuinely help all human beings on the planet. But because there's a financial reason, they want to make sure you've got as many workers going to work as possible. The economic downturn that happened because everybody decided to stay home. Now here's some silver linings about this whole entire COVID thing. People now realize what their worth is, right? I don't have to go and kill myself for $8 or $7 an hour, right? And all of a sudden, people are not coming into those jobs anymore. And all of a sudden, what happened? They started increasing the base rate. I saw a sign.
Listen.
Where McDonald's was getting paid $21 an hour.
Yes.
Why is this happening?
I had a teacher say to me last week. She said, they are now paying in my city $21 an hour for McDonald's. That's more than entry-level teachers are making.
Correct.
That's crazy.
Absolutely. I concur. And part of the issue is, look, it's like, what are things that they want to keep away from the minority populations in this country? Education, access to healthcare, things that can help solidify your foundational starting point so that you can move up and out of your current situation. They want people to be impoverished. They want people to be effectively subservient. And that is what the whole entire, monster that we're fighting, that's one of the heaviest stones to lift, because if that can be removed off of people, there's no reason why you couldn't have a Black Wall Street too. You know what I'm saying? Like things like that, when people are given the fair opportunity and the fair shake and given that bump to be able to get back up, all of a sudden it's like they can move mountains.
Now, where do you work? In Chicago?
No, actually, I currently work in the Deep South. I'm not going to name the state,
okay,
because of I don't want any fallout from my job.
Gotcha.
But I'm in the Deep South currently.
Gotcha. So what I did, I just followed you. Hit me up with an inbox with your contact information, because I'm going to take you up on that offer around those other disparities that exist in our community.
Okay, absolutely. 100%.
I appreciate your input today.
Thank you so much for your time.
Well, man. So yeah, the first hour was kind of hot.
Well, I'm gonna use that for the segue because it definitely had a lot to do with the topic that I've chosen for today. But let me comment on the doctor's input first before we segue. This whole conversation around COVID-19 is very personal to me. As a matter of fact, we're coming up on the anniversary of the passing of my mother. And of course, everybody probably knows that my mother passed away from COVID-19. Her and my family, a lot of members of my family contracted the disease around the same time, or the virus around the same time, sorry. My mother also had COPD, but she was doing really well with her level of COPD. But for the most part, she was basically fairly healthy. But COVID, when COVID came in, almost 11 days later, once she was pretty much diagnosed, with COVID, around 11 days or so later, we lost her. She passed away. And actually, I take that back. It was less than that. I'm thinking 11 because she died on November the 11th. It was less than that because when Mom went into the hospital, it was like a Monday or a Sunday night, something like that. I talked to her that Monday, and less than 24 hours later, she was in ICU, and we never got to talk to her again because once you go into ICU, and especially back then, with the way that they was dealing with COVID in the hospitals, none of us could go see her. And the only person that did get to see her right before she passed away was my sister, and that has, certainly elevated her grief. And she could only see her through glass and reach her hand through this small little hole, but she had to have gloves on and all of that kind of stuff. So, just the way that she had to pass away, technically alone, again, is prolonging our grief and anger with the way that this country has dealt with COVID-19. Anyway, with that being said, along with some of the things that the doctor said, my mom passed away just before the vaccine came out. And something that me and my family often talk about is the fact that if she had lived long enough, or whatever, had not contracted the virus right before the vaccine came out, my mother would have been one of the first people in line to get the vaccine. So I don't have a whole lot of tolerance for hearing, people talk about not getting the vaccine, although I do kind of understand our hesitation, as the Black community, but at the same time, to have been sorely impacted because we've lost way more than just my mother. My mother has certainly made the biggest, most significant impact on me because she was my mother. But we're talking about, literally, babe, we've lost so many people in our community. We, even within our family circle, our faith circle, people that we were friends with or acquaintances with or worked with or whatever the case may be, we can't even sit down in one setting and name everybody. That's how many people we're losing. We're at least, at minimum, having one funeral a week. Last week, it was 3 funerals that we each knew of, people and friends and this, that, and the other. Just buried, one of my spiritual mothers. She died of COVID-19 recently, whatever. So this thing is still happening. We're still being impacted. I wanted to bring this up too, and then we can move on. So my brother died 6 months later after my mom died. And people are saying, oh, it wasn't COVID-19. No, it wasn't COVID-19, but I still blame COVID-19. And the reason why I still blame COVID-19 is because, and I don't know if people will agree with me on this, but I am, okay? So my brother had congestive heart failure. Is it a possibility he would have died or passed away at that time anyway? Sure. But at the same time, him and my mother had the kind of relationship to where my mother pushed him to take his medication, to do what he needed to do, to keep his health up, and so on and so forth, and whatever. And her being away, impacted him emotionally in a way to where he was grieving so poorly that he got to the point to where he wasn't taking his medication like he should. And he started engaging in some behaviors that I'm not going to speak to, but some behaviors he had not, been engaging in. in a long time, especially since being diagnosed with congestive heart failure and being on certain medications and this, that, and the other. So I also blame COVID-19 for impacting other, individuals in their health journey, or whatever the case may be. So COVID-19 is getting a lot of the attention, certainly a lot of the resources, just like the doctor said. But this is nothing new to us. We know that the healthcare system, was constructed from a racist, intention, or whatever. That's nothing new, That's nothing new. But nevertheless, we are still being impacted, and I'm sure we're probably going to be impacted for the rest of our lives, by COVID-19.
Yeah, it's definitely not what people thought, when it first hit, and they thought, oh, we were getting all these warnings in March, and they would think, by the summertime we'll be back in the saddle and doing things like we normally do. And here we are, a year and a half later, and they find that it's not like that at all. And people don't study history. The 1918 pandemic, they really didn't come to any sense of normalcy until 1921, 3 years later.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. I don't even like hearing people say, we got to get back to normal. We got to get back to what it was. First of all, and I say this all the time. First of all, I wasn't appreciative of what it was in the first place, So I'm glad really to have this opportunity. I hate the way that it happened, but to have this opportunity to create new, more advanced and better ways to, and certainly increase our quality of life. So to me, we do have opportunities now to advocate for better, services, for better systems, for better education, for better health care, or whatever. We have an opportunity now that was not afforded to us, before. I kind of analyze it in this way. Remember when we went through, how many years ago was it a tornado came through the city of Springfield?
Oh, that was
10, 11 years?
About 2011.
Okay, so 10, 11 years. Okay, so like 10 years. I think the anniversary was this year. Like the 10th anniversary, I think, was this year. Okay, or last year. I can't remember. I got that COVID, kind of pandemic calendar in my head. But anyway, the tornado tore the roof off the church, caused tremendous damage, very expensive damage to the church. So it was a little bit of a hassle, right, to access the insurance company, and get the insurance resources, financial resources to have the church restored, but not only restored, but elevated, enhanced. So we had enough resources to get that done, and then some other things that needed to be done in the church. So that's the way that I'm viewing the pandemic. It's like, it's awful. The pandemic is awful, and we're losing so much, and we're losing so many people. But at the same time, we had this amazing opportunity to access appropriate resources, or resources that we've already invested in, or whatever, in places that we've already invested in, tapping into those resources to get, what we need to restore and also enhance, our quality of life. So that's the way I see that.
Okay. All right.
All right. So you want me to transition to today's topic?
You gonna share that with me?
Yes, I'm gonna share that with you. That's the reason why I asked.
I want you to do that. Let me just answer this one question that's on the screen.
Okay.
Hope Radio is live right now. I just if you go to TuneIn Radio and you search for Hope Radio, it is live right now. And I guess I got to look for that sermon. It may be on our podcast. I'm not as crazy as you think I am. You remember that? I don't remember that sermon, but I'm sure if you remember it, I must have preached it. It's probably in our podcast archive somewhere. But if you go to hoperadio1.org, or if you go to TuneIn Radio or iHeart or a number of other places, you can catch Hope Radio, which is live right now because I just pulled it up. And Dietrich Haddon is on it right now. So I know it's live. All right, babe, go ahead.
No, so I was really enjoying your show earlier today. You know, that's kind of a hot button topic for me anyway, because my question is, how can you, be Christian? I mean, and I kind of hate to use like those European terminologies. So how about we say, how can you be a follower of Christ? Believe in Jesus Christ, and certainly be a leader in kingdom or Christendom, and not have and a black leader at that. But I mean, just Christendom all over, in general, and not have a bone of activism in you concerning Black Lives Matter or Black people and racial justice. So I was really appreciative, and I was really listening to some of the feedback and input you were receiving this morning, and so I just kind of want to bring that topic into what's happening here in the city of Springfield, and building up to the election on November 2nd, which we know is one of the most historical municipal elections that we've been able to witness for a few reasons. One, certainly is because of ward representation. And so we're really starting to see a real significant reflection of ward representation winning here in the city of Springfield. I think this is the largest number of Black and brown women running for a city office. I also think that this might be the largest number of Black men, Black and brown, running for office as well. And and so things have really started to become very interesting in the discussion about politics, for instance, versus the prophetic, faith, and the fight for freedom, and where Jesus falls in the discussion of justice. Now, I personally say there is no justice without Jesus, because Jesus is the reason that my thought process or my Black consciousness is where it is. He's the reason for all of that. He's the inspiration behind it. He's the motivation behind it. And he certainly is the king that rules my mind and my heart when it comes to racial justice, when it comes to equality, and when it comes to equity of resources. Now, I wanted to bring up a couple of other things before we get further into this discussion. I want to bring up the pathology of politics and the prophetic, but I also want to bring up that Sister Danielle Allen, who is the first Black woman to run for governor in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, was with us on yesterday. And yesterday she confirmed the fact that some of the main themes that she's hearing throughout the western part of the state, specifically here in Springfield, Massachusetts, is that we continue to be overlooked as a city. The city is constantly overlooked by state and sometimes city officials. The allocation of resources are we don't see evidence of appropriate allocation of resources, specifically here in the city of Springfield, to the black community. I got to be very detailed and plain about the black community not receiving the resources that we have access, but we never received. And then certainly housing disparity is like one of the top items on the agenda for the government, and then the social determinants of health, including mental health. Those are the four main issues right now. That's a recurring thing that she's hearing from people in the city, or in the western part of the state specifically, but here in Springfield, that we need to address. So, Bishop, my question is to you: where does politics fall in the prophetic? Where does politics fall in the prophetic?
Well, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, it is a loaded question.
But when you talk about the prophetic, and we've got to understand the difference between terms, because in our contemporary culture, when I say contemporary, I don't mean necessarily 2021, I mean modern history. So when we're talking about really the case in point, the Pentecostal charismatic movement from the Azusa Street revival is contemporary. It's in the last 100 years. We have developed our own set of terms and understandings of what things mean. So oftentimes to that segment, if you talk about prophetic, they're thinking in terms of the foretelling of the future. Someone who is prophesying, this is going to happen in your life. Thus saith the Lord, thus and so. But there's another meaning of prophetic in which we're talking about making plain the edicts, the word, the doctrinal beliefs, the priorities of God in the public sphere. So when
that's the prophetic I'm talking about.
So on one hand, someone may say that Prophet Joe Blow, he's going to come to your church and he's going to prophesy. This one's going to get healed. That one's going to. But when someone like Freddie Haynes always calls me prophet, and when Haynes calls me prophet, he doesn't mean I'm foretelling the future. He means I'm speaking truth to power. I'm speaking God's word in this contemporary wicked society.
Right.
And so when I speak about the prophetic voice of the church, I'm talking about the church lifting its voice in the way that the prophet actually said, cry loud, lift up your voice like a trumpet, show my people their transgression, in the house of Jacob their sin. So in other words, you have to speak in a contemporary wicked society the word of God unapologetically and unashamedly. And so the voice of the church, the prophetic voice of the church, is needed more than ever in this society that we live in, and it can ill afford to remain quiet in certain circles. But for some reason, many have promulgated a concept that the church has no business interfering into politics, current events. Well, here's my thing. If it affects the people that you have been charged as a shepherd to oversee, if it affects the people who are under your protection, how can you not speak against or work against or deal with the social ills that affect your people? And politics is one of them. You know, and I often say this all the time: you're not officially alive until a politician signs your birth certificate. It's not officially dead until a politician signs your death certificate. And politics influences everything that happens between the points of life and death. So how can I, as a preacher, not speak prophetically to a political system that influences the people I have been called to shepherd? It's important to do. And you're not going to be an effective shepherd if you don't. If you ignore those things, if your only response, and I believe in the power of prayer. My grandmother, I used to sneak upstairs in the attic when I was a little boy, just to watch my grandmother spread quilts and stuff out on the floor in her room and pray and speak in tongues. I believe in the power of prayer. That's how I was raised. But I don't believe that you stop there. You know, faith without works is dead, being alone. So after you pray about it, then do something about it.
I heard somebody say, I can't remember where I got it from, where I heard it from, but you know, prayer has legs. Prayer has legs. In other words, a prayer is about what you're doing. You know, so you get directives. So you commune with God to get directives on what to do. You know, to have a conscience about what you doing, or a conviction about what you're doing. But you just don't pray and wait, you know, for it to happen. You pray so you'll know what to do, how to do, and then you know your faith certainly, you know, gives you the strength, the ability, the capability. And sometimes, like we even heard yesterday in your message, sometimes we have to do that even when we are afraid, even when it's uncharted territory, even when you know. But nevertheless, you have that conviction and that righteousness, you know, walking with you and riding with you, you know, to the polls or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
Sometimes you speak it before you even pray it. You know, there's verse of scripture where Elijah challenged Ahab because of his wickedness and the he said, you know what? It ain't gonna rain till I say so.
Till I say so. That's
and then the Bible said, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain. See, he spoke it. He spoke prophetically. You know, truth to power. To say, God, cripple your government, and I there, it ain't gonna rain till I say so. Then he went and said, like in the words of the late Bishop O.T. Jones, he went and prayed and said, Lord, now don't embarrass me now.
Right. Please, Jesus. I done told this man. Right. So we got some of that going on right now, you know, in the city of Springfield. And I don't know if you want to open it up to some callers, but I wanted to put some things out there. So we are 2 weeks away from the November 2nd city elections.
I got a couple people in the Twitter space. We'll let up. Go ahead.
Okay. And you know, so we're 2 weeks away, you know, 2 weeks away from one of the most, like I said earlier, one of the most historic elections. We've never seen this many black people, especially black women, and brown people running for state. You know, we had a historical election last year with some of the state appointments, you know, who were elected. And I mean, just, you know, things are going crazy. But here's the thing that I don't know if you know about. So of the 8 Afro Latinas and black people that are running, that were placed on the slate, placed on the first ever developed black slate here. And these are candidates that are being endorsed by a large number of black involved, engaged residents in the city of Springfield. So you have Justin Hurst, you have Tracy Whitfield, who are at large candidates. You have Leslie Campbell, you have Janae McDonald, and you have Zeta Govan, who is running for all of these people are running for city council. Some of the stuff that's happening is their lawn signs are being picked up and thrown away, destroyed. The opponents' lawn signs are being placed in those places where their lawn signs have been picked up. Opponents' lawn signs are being placed in places where they did not get permission to put their lawn signs up. They're also breaking some of the rules, some of the city rules and state rules concerning campaigning. It's a lot of crazy stuff going on. A lot of lies being pushed, rumors being pushed. I believe these people are afraid. I believe these people are scared of what is on the horizon, in my opinion, of happening. And for it's been a long time coming, but for the first time, we possibly could get a greater number of Black and brown people on the city council, and certainly have a greater number of Black and brown people on the school committee as well, that will take, both of those city governances, in a direction that is more fitting and better, certainly for the greater good of the community as a whole. So it's a whole lot of things, Bishop, that's happening now, 2 weeks away from the election. I also wanted to add this piece of information. The community is not totally aware that there's an election coming up. Everybody and their mama knew about the election on last year, the national election, and our percentages of voters went up from 6% to 27%. Last year we had about 100,000 registered voters, and so we had about 27,000 people to vote last year. That was historic. And but prior to that, 5, 6, maybe up to 8% of people would come out and vote at local elections. Maybe that would increase a little bit, maybe 10 to 15%, in the national elections when we're voting for president. But this election, this city election, is more important to us. Listen, I know every election is important, but this is a critical election. This election is very important. It really has the potential of shifting the power to Black and brown communities, at least as far as representation is concerned. So this is a very important election. The resources have not come in, and they're not going to come in, to educate the community about voting, getting out to vote. A lot of people think that they're going to get ballots in the mail. You're not going to get ballots in the mail unless you requested a ballot. And now it's too late for that. Early voting starts on Saturday. And early voting is not a ballot either. It's not a mail-in ballot. So if you have not requested a mail-in ballot by now, forget it. Just make plans to either go down to City Hall starting on Saturday to cast your early vote, or an absentee vote, because that's what that is, an absentee vote. Or certainly make plans and arrangements to go to the polls on November 2nd, Tuesday, November 2nd, to cast your vote. But listen, I'm just going to say it. Those white folks are plotting and planning because they do not want to see a shift in power like this for the school committee or, the city council. They do not want to see these powerful Black and brown people getting on those two governing boards, or whatever, to continue to do what they've already been doing, which is advocating for righteousness and certainly advocating for what is right and just concerning the Black and Brown community, but more specifically, the Black community here in the city of Springfield. The hours, Angela, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 8:30 to 5. Forgive me if I'm wrong about that, but everybody can just go to the City Hall page, go to the elections page, and all of that information is there. Everything you need, the phone number, the address to City Hall, how you can go about, casting your absentee vote.
All right. Let me bring Dark Necessities. I think that's what it says. Anyway, you're in the Twitter space. Good morning.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Bishop Swan. I'm sorry. Talking to my daughter. Thank you for accepting my call. I have been following you for few years on Twitter, and I live in Northeast Arkansas, and I work in Memphis, and I've always your messages have been uplifting. And but I grew up Church of God in Christ, and there's two things I wanted your comment on.
Okay.
I grew up Church of God in Christ, and my mother built a church, and now, but the church can't be considered a church unless it's a man running it. It's only her church can be considered a church. It can only be only if a man is running, and she has. So they've considered it a mission.
Yeah.
So I wanted your comment on that because I do enjoy your brand, Church of God in Christ. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to know what you thought about Chappelle in The Closer.
Okay. Okay. All right. So first, let me. I'm fourth generation Church of God in Christ on both sides of my family. My father, people come from Mississippi, and my great-great-grandfather started the St. Luke Church of God in Christ in Benton, Mississippi, in his living room with Bishop Mason, the founder of the Church of God in Christ. I'm also fourth generation on my mother's side. Her people hailed from Missouri and from Cairo, Illinois, and migrated to New England, to the Waterbury, Connecticut area. And the uniqueness is I grew up with all of the dogma, all of the ways of the Church of God in Christ. I saw the disparate treatment of women in ministry. I've had many women in ministry in the church at the highest levels of leadership. My grandmother was a jurisdictional supervisor of the women's department. My great-grandmother was a jurisdictional supervisor. My great aunt, Virginia Hudson, was a jurisdictional supervisor. And my grandmother, my mother's mother, was a pastor. She grew up in the Church of God in Christ. She went to a church after she was reclaimed. She was backslidden for years, and then she came back to the church, and she started attending a church called Faith Temple Church of God in Christ under the late Elder Irvin. And she became very involved in that church. And upon Elder Irvin's demise, the members wanted her as the pastor. And of course, Church of God in Christ would not ordain women. And the bishop at that time, the late Bishop Brewer, was not going to install her as a pastor. So the church pulled out of the Church of God in Christ, even though they were still, in essence, COGIC. They still taught from our Sunday school books, our YPWW books. They did everything any COGIC church would do. Their people still went to the national conventions and all of that. But my grandmother had to go to the Church of the Living God under the late Bishop Marshall, to get ordained so that she could marry and bury and do ordinances in the church. And for 20 years, she pastored until she passed away. So I grew up watching my grandmother pastor a church, watching women in ministry. Some of the strongest influences in my life were women in ministry. So I've been a strong advocate that anything a man can do, most of the time a woman can do it better. But certainly, you know, a woman can carry the word, because the Bible said in the beginning was the word, and the word was God, and the word was with God, talking about Jesus. She can carry the word, but then you want to say she can't preach the word, or she can't shepherd people in the word. So I've been an advocate even within the church for us to ordain women. My mentor, one of my mentors, the late Bishop O.T. Jones Jr., was a strong advocate for the ordination of women. Matter of fact, he started ordaining women. The general board had to intercede and stop him from ordaining women. So he was a man before his time. So I'm completely in support of the ordination of women, and women being able to fully pastor and engage in ministry, just like a man who is called to do the same as she is. People are often surprised when they come into our church to see women in the pulpit. We don't relegate them to the floor. If a woman joins our church and she had the title of minister or reverend or something, we don't then demote her down to a missionary. We call her what she is. And I know that's a little against the grain for a Kojic bishop to do that, but that's where I am. Unfortunately, that's not where our entire church is. As far as Dave Chappelle, Dave told the truth. What can I say, in the closer? And, the most poignant point in the closer for me was this. He said, the baby killed a nigga in Walmart. He said, and it didn't affect his career. He said, now here's the thing. In America, you can kill a nigga, but you can't offend a gay person. That's a fact. I mean, when he gave the joke about the people going off into space and then coming back trying to take over the Earth thousands of years later, and he said, I call it space Jews. He was directly talking about the situation of the Jewish occupation of Palestine. It's a fact. I mean, it's funny, it's catchy, and people get offended by it, but it's yet truth. So that's my point on both of those parts. I hope that answers your question. Caller, you're on the air.
Caller, Bishop, how you doing?
I'm good.
Okay, I was just listening to the sister as we were talking to on Twitter. She was talking about the Church of God in Christ, and she mentioned something about the women. Me personally, I was brought up in the Church of God in Christ, and and I saw certain things that in the church, where women and men look kind of different. Now, as I read through the Bible, I look at the church, at the beginning of the church, majority what God used it was men. But see, I don't have no problem with women carrying a message, because God will use what He wants. But you know what though? I do kind of, as me personally, have a problem with women pastoring.
So let me say this. When you talk about the Bible, the majority of the people used in the Bible were men. First of all, we can't make it that simplistic, because, and this is a whole lesson that I don't even have time to go into. But if you talk about the creation or the putting together of the Bible or the canon in terms of which books were accepted as canonical scripture, as authentic scripture, it was a group of men in the Council of Nicaea who, in a male-dominated patriarchal society, who made the decision of what books should be in the Bible. Now, there were scriptures that were written by women. Okay, Mary Magdalene wrote a gospel. Other women wrote gospels, but they were not included in the canon because There were men making all the decisions about what should be included. And of course, the only books that were included were books written by men in a male-dominated patriarchal society that is going to depict the major players in the biblical narrative as men. So that doesn't surprise me by any stretch of the imagination. But I'll remind you what the late Bishop Jones said 3,000 years ago. The presiding bishop of the Church of God's name was Deborah, and she was a woman.
Okay, Bishop. All right. I just, I'm glad you brought that out. I'm going to do more looking and more stuff. God said all I get
understanding.
Or to draw some things that I really didn't see. So thank you.
All right. Thank you for your call. Woo! I'm surprised you ain't talking.
That wasn't my topic, so I don't have nothing to say about that. I wish they had called in your earlier show.
Well, they called in this one.
Well, that wasn't my topic, so I didn't have nothing to say about that. I really wanted to, continue the discussion on the fact that, all of this stuff is happening to some of these candidates right here. And like I said, we're 2 weeks away from the election. A lot of our people don't even know that an election is coming up, a very important election is coming up. One of the things that's constantly being said is that one of the reasons why we're always overlooked and dismissed, politically speaking, is because we are not lifting up our voices, through using our collective voting power. That's one of the reasons why we're having some of the problems that we're having here in the city of Springfield. So this election is really important, not just for you to go out and vote on November 2nd, but for us to stay together as a community to also hold those that we do end up electing and putting in office, if you will, or allowing to be placed in office, holding them accountable to our needs and our concerns here in the city. So,
well, let me say this to the people that are out here playing the cheap political games. When I say the cheap political games, is stealing lawn signs and all that stuff. Man, that stuff is so played out.
Right.
That is so childish for grown behind people. I'll tell you what, you might catch a hot one, if you come on my property taking stuff off. I'm just saying, I don't know what you're on here for. You trespass on my property, I don't know what your intention might be. So, and I say that in jest, tongue in cheek, but seriously, you walking on people's property, some people might think you do.
It's not just people's property, but they are doing that. They are doing that.
How you gonna walk on somebody's private property to steal on? If you can't win without stealing lawn signs, it's because you're running a crappy campaign.
Right.
You're obviously not getting your message out, or obviously you ain't getting the money you need to put more lawn signs, or you're not getting the people who want to accept your signs on their lawn. But I mean, that is such a cheap political trick. I mean, it's so pathetic.
It's not only cheap, it's obvious who it is, and why. One of the things, and I'm gonna call names this time. I didn't call names last time, and I actually can't remember her last name. But the woman, the young lady that is running for school committee at large. I think her first name is Carrie. I forget her last name. Anyway, her, I had opportunity to be in a group that interviewed her. And another young lady that was in the group brought up the school to prison pipeline. This fascinated me. That this young lady that's running for school committee at large in the city of Springfield, Massachusetts, had no idea what the school to prison pipeline was and what it meant to a school district like Springfield. That blew my mind. It's like, what is she running for? And of course, I realized that some people are not running for the betterment of our children, of our schools, of the people who work for our schools or education in general. Some people are running because they want to be in a seat of power and influence when it comes to deciding on educational contracts, when it comes to the allocation of educational funds, and this, that, and the other. Some people are not running for people. Some people are running for money and power.
Well, and some people are running, and some people are running to keep others out of power.
Absolutely.
Some people are running as sycophants for the power structure so that they can ensure that those who oppose the power structure don't get back into office.
Right. And the fact that she was a lawyer and didn't know what the school to prison pipeline was, a practicing lawyer in 2021 and didn't know what the school to prison pipeline was, and she bragged on being married to a police officer and didn't know what the school to prison pipeline was, is insulting. And if we sit back, and I'm talking to my people right now, if we sit back and allow somebody like that to be elected to the school committee at large, then we are sick. I'm going to be mad at us. I'm going to be mad at us that we didn't do what we needed to do to keep somebody like that out of a school committee seat. So that kind of stuff is what's going on in this election.
Only thing we can do is get out and vote. And so that's
we can help other people get out and vote.
When you don't get out and vote, you're still voting, whether you realize it or not.
Absolutely.
You don't,
you're voting by allowing people like that to get that seat. To boot somebody like a LaTonya Naylor out, or to boot somebody like a Denise Hurst out. Because right now, it's only 2 at-large seats on the school committee, and Denise holds one, and LaTonya holds the other. And we need to make sure that they both get back into those 2 at-large seats. We have to. It's important. It's critical.
So this is what you all need to understand, that the 2 at-large seats in Springfield currently are being held by 2 Black women. Mm-hmm. And they don't like that.
Oh, they hate it.
They don't like that. They don't like that. They don't like.
And they not just Black women. They like the boldest and the baddest, the most qualified. They no joke women. They no joke women. So the fact that they Black is the bonus. Okay? The fact that they Black is the bonus. But they bona fide, no joke, righteous women. Righteous women. They are the most qualified. And they deserve to be in those seats.
What are we talking about next week?
I think we got to stay in this vein because, like I said, this election is critical. This election is important. So, like I said, it's way more important than, what we did on last year, to get people out to vote for the Biden-Harris ticket, or whatever the case may be. It's not even that. These are individuals that we need to put in these municipal positions to continue to advocate for us, or to increase and enhance the advocacy for Black people here in this city. And listen, I'm not biting my tongue on saying Black people, because we know now, and research is proving it, that if we do our best, or if we do what's right by Black people, everybody else is going to automatically be impacted in a better way because of it. If we do our best and if we do what's right by Black people, everybody's going to be blessed.
And we need to speak specifically about our people because everybody else
do
specifically about their particular demographic all the time. And we always have to only be included in this rising tide lifts all boats included with everybody kind of scenario.
Right.
There are certain things that are specific to our community, that are unique to our community, and we have a right to speak to those needs and those concerns that are specific to Black people, period. So we should never have any shame in talking about Black people. And the sad thing is we're the only people who always include somebody else in our struggle.
Right.
We're the only ones who always talking about Black and brown, Black and Latino, Black and Asian, Black and Black and Black and Black and Black.
Right. But other communities, they're not quick to include us. I know.
They're not out there including us, in their conversations and in their advocacy. They're not out there talking about, now make sure you give the Negroes something too. No. When they get to the table, they're talking about, this is the jobs we want for our community. These are the resources we want for our communities. Let them Black folks speak for themselves. And so that's what we're doing.
That's right.
That's what we're doing.
Right. And I know we got to go. But, I heard something said in your show earlier today about getting to a place where we have our own. So, we won't have to kind of kowtow, or whatever, or watch what we say, watch what we do, because they'll pull the little bit that the crumbs that they do give to us, away, or whatever. So getting back to that thought, that's why it's really important that Black folk come out. Listen, I ain't even, we'll let the other communities stay at the 5-6%. But if the Black folk, the registered Black folk in the city go out and vote, and I'm talking about in high numbers, if we go out and vote, we can do what's right by the city overall. We can do what's right by the city overall. And again, this will take us in the step of the right direction. And again, having power and developing our own stuff, developing our own stuff to where, the politics of the day or the politics that's ingrained in white supremacy or whatever the case may be won't be the rule of the day, will not be the rule of the day. But, we'll have some power of our own, and we'll start developing our own economic power, our own political power, our own power of influence, our own things, our own media, our own, all of that, good stuff that we need to, again, once again, empower our community.
All right. If you're in the 413 and you're looking for a place to worship, stop by the Spring of Hope Church of God in Christ, 35 Alden Street, Springfield, Massachusetts. 11 o'clock a.m. on Sunday morning is our morning worship experience. Also, remember the Greater Springfield NAACP meets every fourth Tuesday. I believe 26, somewhere around there, is our meeting for this month. Go to naacpspringfield.org if you want to join in membership. Get involved with what is happening right here in your own city. So all kinds of ways for you to connect with us and stay in touch. Hope Radio is live. So hoperadio1.org is on 24 hours a day. You can click the iHeartRadio link, the TuneIn app, various ways that you can get to Hope Radio if you want to chime in. And then check out our podcast. Anywhere podcasts are streamed, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. And next week, same time, same batch station, we'll be on at 9 o'clock with spoken word, and we'll flow into Justice and Flow at 10 o'clock. I don't think First Lady's going to be with us. Well, she can still be with us, I guess, even though she'll be in Dallas.
Can I just say that? Let me add that while we on our way out. My mom's birthday, what would have been my mom's 80th birthday, is this Wednesday. And I will be in Dallas at home with my family on this weekend to celebrate her birthday. So we're going to celebrate the legacy of a queen, my mother, Edna Mason. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you for letting me say that, Bishop.
All
Good
right.
morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning.
All right. Until the next time we talk to y'all, y'all talk to us. Always remember, God loves you. So do we. We're out. Peace.